atonement, an admission of poor taste, but if you thought that last night's apology from David Letterman to the Palin family would be the end of it, you don't know the Palin family. Our third story on the countdown, Sarah and Todd Palin refuse to take yes for an answer and refuse to accept the empathy of people of all political stripes so they can instead martyr themselves and their daughters on a fake cross of pedophilia. Mr. Letterman devoting an entire segment of The Late Show to the Palin saga, first acknowledging the Palins' outrage over two jokes he told about one of their daughters, then inviting the governor and husband to come on the show, and after reading the Palin statements concerning the offending jokes, he went on to read the very jokes they found offensive in the first place.
I'm telling you, I recognize that these are ugly. Yeah. These are actually ugly. These are borderline, but again, in an act of desperation to get cheap laughs, which is what I've been doing for the last 30 years. These are not jokes made about her 14-year-old daughter. I would never make jokes about raping or having sex of any description with a 14-year-old girl. I mean, look at my record. It has never happened. I don't think it's funny. I would never think it was funny. I wouldn't put it in a joke. Here's where you draw the line. Yes, maybe these are questionable because the girl who actually, excuse me, but was knocked up is now 18 years old. Am I guilty of poor taste? Yes. Did I suggest that it was okay for her 14-year-old daughter to be having promiscuous sex? No.
So, apology accepted? Nah, not so much. Last night, Todd Palin issued this reaction. Nice attempt by Letterman to draw the heat away from himself. However, Willow was the only one at the Yankees game, and the only Palin child included in the photo opportunities with the Giulianis, as was obvious. Regardless of which Palin daughter it was, Bristol, Willow, or Piper, these sexually perverted comments are outside the acceptance of mainstream America. That's Todd's now speaking for mainstream America. In case that message was not clear enough, today Palin spokeswoman Meg Stapleton released a follow-up regarding Letterman's statement about the Palin statement about the offending jokes. The Palins have no intention of providing a ratings boost for David Letterman by appearing on his show. Plus, it would be wise to keep Willow away from David Letterman. We were advised that Mrs. Palin is going to be on the Today Show, so please stay away from the train tracks so when the wreck occurs in the morning, nobody gets hurt besides the principals. Joining us now, Washington editor of The Week magazine, political columnist from Bloomberg News, Margaret Carlson. Margaret, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
So what I don't get here is this was to me a no-brainer for the Palins. They had everybody going, yeah, you know, that was a little over the line. We feel sorry for you, and that shouldn't have been said. And in 24 hours, they go from victims to opportunists. Why?
You know, there's a worse person in the world somewhere in this story, but it's not David Letterman anymore. Yep. He did more than any late-night comic has ever done in terms of apologies. I went and Googled to see who's apologized. Now, you know, Republicans are used to apologizing to Rush Limbaugh, but late-night comics are not used to apologizing to politicians because if they did, they would be doing it every night. David Letterman did not drag the 14-year-old daughter into this. The Palins dragged the 14-year-old daughter into it. And it was absolutely egregious. And they obviously hunger for this kind of melodrama, these family feud type things, because they could have let it rest, and they didn't. In fact, they escalated to calling David Letterman perverted and saying they had to keep their daughter away from him.
That amazed. And the other thing that amazes me on this here is we never learn lessons from history, and clearly Sarah Palin didn't. I mean, assuming we have not heard the last of this, it just doesn't go away, and the Today Show appearance tomorrow suggests it won't, unless she cancels it. Does she have no idea what happened to that guy she used to know, McCain, I think his name was, when he overplayed his hand with Letterman last year? September 24th, not that anybody keeps records or anything of the exact date or who replaced him when he canceled out on Letterman?
Right. I mean, it's a classic thing to go on the show and have your moment where, you know, you all come back together again. Can't we all get along? Hugh Grant did it. President Bill Clinton did it when after that disastrous, appearance, he came back and played his saxophone. I think it was for Jay Leno. I'm not sure who it was. And John McCain, a kind of a classic thing. I mean, the Palins really, you know, the zone of privacy around the children stops at a certain point. And the point it stops is when you take your child out of the zone of privacy. And that ended for the Palins when Bristol was paraded on stage at the convention with her now estranged fiance, as if they were Charles and Diana from the Klondike to be celebrated. And then they sent her out. This is the worst of all. I mean, sent her out like, you know, a member of a vaudeville troupe to preach abstinence, a subject about which you are likely to get some jokes, especially that abstinence tour is sponsored by Candies, which you probably don't know, Keith, is a clothing line that is aimed at tweens to make them, to have them dressed very suggestively.
Yeah. It is a train wreck, and just as another plug, it'll be on the Today Show in the morning unless she cancels. The Charles and Diana of the Klondike. I love it. Margaret Carlson of Bloomberg News and The Week magazine. Great, thanks,
Good
Margaret.
night, Keith.